Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, September 17th, and this is a Moscow City Council meeting. Art?
Yeah. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Art. Now we'll move on to item number 1, which is the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Gina, I think you beat Catherine to the punch.
She did.
Okay,
You can
got
have the next one,
a
Catherine.
motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the consent agenda as is. We'll start the roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay. We will move on to item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary, do we have anything this evening, sir?
I have no report this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, item number 3 is mayor's appointments. I do not have any this council meeting, and we'll for the next one, so we will move on to item number 4, which is public comment and mayor's response period. We allow a 15-minute period of time, as long as it's something that is not on this evening's agenda, or something that is in front of the Board of Adjustment and/or Planning and Zoning. We will let you see what you want to have to say. We'll give you 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium up here. Give us your name and your address and tell us what your concerns are. Right up here, miss, if you want to come up here.
Hi, my name's Mackenzie Lawrence. My address is 1320 Linda Lane, apartment 8. And I am here because this year I get the awesome opportunity to represent the students of U of I as the community outreach coordinator. So I'm serving on Nicole, the ASUI president's cabinet, and we thought it'd be a good idea for me to just come introduce myself. And one thing this year that we're working really hard on is the approachability of ASUI. We really want students to come to us with their problems, but also their projects and their ideas. And the same thing is true for the city, especially city council or any other businesses or anything. We really want to enrich our partnerships and anything like that. So I can answer any questions you might have, and I just wanted to say hi.
Well, Mackenzie, we're happy to have you here with us this evening. And some of the things that we do as a council and as a city and as your ASUI student body leadership, we have a couple of meetings a year. Probably have one in November, I'm guessing. Jen Peffner is our assistant city supervisor. And usually we have one in the springtime of the year, and we have one in this very chambers here, and then usually we have one on campus somewhere. So, yeah, Jen is our liaison for you to flag her down. I'm guessing you probably already know this, Jen.
Awesome.
So, anyway, but we love having you here. And anybody that you can rope in from the university, drag them on down here. We'd love to have you kids. So,
Sounds good.
Catherine?
Okay, yes. So I've spoken about this with the ASUI president and with our leadership, and actually with the counselor that helps you all, who's
Sean?
Sean.
Okay.
And it's an idea. I don't know where it's going to go, but it would be great if there was some way that you could look into. Maybe if you all could sit on a commission, that you could get a credit for doing that through the university. But I think, so I know that we're exploring it, but I think it needs more energy to do it, and it'd be great to have students as voting members on our commissions, and we have quite a few. And it's a commitment, but and maybe they could make a year commitment, and in that, with a certain amount of participation, they could get a university credit. I have no idea if that would even be feasible or not, but
Well, as a political science student, first, I think that would be awesome. I think that's a great opportunity. And also, there's a lot of internship things that they provide for. So I think that definitely I can give you my information, or I can get yours, and I think that's something we really should work on. That would
that'd
be
be
awesome.
great. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Perfect.
Anything else? Jim?
Could you send a email to the council with your contact information, so if an issue comes up that we'd like student input on, that we could
Absolutely, yeah.
contact
definitely.
you, because you'd be the
Who
point
would
of the
be the
spear
best
on that.
person to get that email list from?
Right there.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Jen Peffner.
Perfect.
She is our point person for all these types of things.
Okay, Great.
And she doesn't know it sometimes. We have to, but it's fun because I get to elect her for these sort of things, so it's great.
Perfect.
Other questions for Mackenzie? Well, thank you very much, Mackenzie, for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Others that would like to come up, speak to us, please come up. Seeing nobody else race to the podium, why, we will move on to item number 5, which is our Mayor's Charity Golf Tournament presentation. To Family Promise, Gary Reedner's got it, and this is my exciting thing this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I love this sort of thing.
Thank you, Your Honor. First off, I'd like to welcome Bruce Pittman, President of Family Promise of the Palouse. Family Promise was the selected charity to be supported by the Mayor's Golf Tournament. We were in our 4th year this year. We had Alternatives to Violence of the Palouse. The first 2 years were the recipient of the balance of the donated funds, and this year and last year, Family Promise of the Palouse. It was a great year. Staff, I thought, really stepped up to the plate. Greg Morrison, Khalees out at Parks and Rec, Amanda Argona and Jen Piffner just did an excellent job of putting on what I consider to be a really great event. We had increased sponsorship this year. First off, we had 104 people playing golf, 26 teams. When we started this 4 years ago, we had 13 teams. So it's really come up a lot since then. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We had 17 local businesses who sponsored holes at $250 per hole. We had our 500 level sponsors, University of Idaho, Sodexo, both who were sponsors of the tournament, gave us a special deal for charitable events to give us reduced green fees, as well as to provide the 19th hole activities at cost. So that really helped us out. The Corner Club, John Kimberling of Kimberling Insurance, and Gritman Medical Center all were in at the $500 level. Our premier sponsor this year was Mead & Hunt, who's providing the consulting services at the airport, who sponsored both of the hole-in-one competitions that I don't believe that we had to pay any insurance out on, so that was good. Not so good for the golfers. Anyway, with that, I'd ask the mayor to come up, if he would, as well as Bruce and Greg. And Jen, I'm going to let you get in here, and I'm going to take the picture. So there you go.
Nice.
No. Okay. It'll just go.
One, two, three. There will be one more. As soon as it tells me I can. 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, here we have $4,216.13. Mr. Bruce Pittman, would you like to say a few words?
I want to say thank you.
Come right up here, Bruce.
Mayor Lambert, thank you. And thank you to the staff who put on such an incredibly successful event. It was a very hot day that day.
So it was?
And yet people were out there in good spirit and were, again, very generous. And I know that an event this complex doesn't just happen with a few people saying, y'all come. And so, again, to the staff, what an incredible job. This money will go a long way to helping us address some poverty issues in our community. Family Promise is getting ready to celebrate its 5th anniversary, our 5th anniversary of providing direct service, and that celebration will be in late October. And just last week, we welcomed our 60th family into Family Promise, our 60th family into Family Promise. And during that time, 80% of our families were able to find safe, sustainable housing 80% within 90 days. And so it is an important partner in dealing with poverty issues on campus, in the community. But we also are grateful to Steve Bonner and Sojourners and many of the other frontline agencies who do important work in this community. So this community is incredibly generous, and we're grateful. Thank you.
Don't run off, Bruce. I want to brag a little bit on Family Promise and just point it out. You hit it once, and this is something, ladies and gentlemen, that you should think about. 80% success rate is huge, Bruce, in any kind of endeavor such as you're taking on in your group. And Family Promise, and I got acquainted with him 4 years ago from Bruce himself, and made a donation. And so then, and we've had some breakfasts and different things that we've been able to go to. But Family Promise of the Palouse is a huge, huge thing for our area, and it's something that all of us need to work together on. And your staff was terrific as well, Katie Carlson and others. And I'd be remiss, Greg Morrison, Kalisha Owens, of course, Jen Piffner, Amanda, who is just a firecracker in my view, and Kristen from Parks and Rec, and others. And I don't want to slight anybody because Parks and Rec, we had a great time. Yes, it was 100 and whatever, 4 degrees. God, I thought, oh, by the way, you know, I thought I could hit the ball pretty straight, and I found myself in other fairways frequently. I didn't hit anybody, so I'm happy that that didn't happen. But this kind of an event is a fun thing for the entire community, and that's what the whole nature of it is for, Bruce, is to bring people out. And you're absolutely right. We have a very generous community, and it was fun. You know, hopefully next year when we do this, we're hoping it's about 20 degrees cooler, which would be a little bit more comfortable. Nice. But man, 26 teams, 17 sponsors. I was just really stoked as a mayor, and I was running around like crazy. In fact, I was so excited about things that day. I kept wondering why I was hitting so funny to the left all the time. And I told Gary, who was on my team, I said, it dawned on me on hole number 17, I realized I didn't have my golf shoes on. So I was doing all kinds of bizarre boomerang shots out there. Now, that being said, Bruce, I'm going to wear them next year and hopefully improve somewhat.
Again, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you as well. Okay, item number 6, funding request from Sojourners Alliance. Gary Reeder, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, John. Now I have to go back and get my glasses.
Oh.
Sorry, Your Honor, I got a little confused. I saw the urban berm on here and thought that I was farther down in the agenda.
Did I skip one?
No, no.
Nope. Oh, no. Okay.
No, you did just fine. I just got confused.
Sometimes I move ahead without recognizing, but usually somebody up here kind of helps me out and straightens me out if I have that happen to me.
I was just coming up here to get my agenda and didn't realize I was next on it. What we have here today is a request from Sojourners Alliance. Steve Bonner, the executive director of Sojourners, Sojourners is here. He's requesting $7,000 from the city for installation of security cameras at the Sojourners facility. He believes that the installation of those cameras will assist both in moderating potentially dangerous behaviors, as well as provide protections for Sojourners staff and residents out at Sojourners. As you know, Sojourners suffered a fire which damaged their facility. It had shut down for a while that was being repaired. And Steve himself was the object of an assault out at the Sojourners facility. So the idea, again, and I will invite Steve up here with your permission to address the council directly, but he believes that these cameras will moderate those behaviors and make for a safer environment. The The staff has identified, and council has given some support for sojourners from legislative non-prioritized projects in the past. They had a rebuilding project a few years ago that council agreed to participate in. Council made it clear at that time that they could not offer any operations funds, but that they could participate in the appropriate circumstances in a finite project. So Steve is here requesting the same treatment that he got a couple of years ago. There is about a $7,600 balance left in non-prioritized projects, which started out in the FY 2018 budget at $20,000. If council agrees to fund this request, that will leave a balance of about $650 in non-prioritized projects. And of course, the end of the budget year is September 30th, 2018. So we will still be within budget for that. So with that, with your permission, I would invite Steve to come up
Be great.
and address you directly.
Come on up, Steve, please.
Mayor Lambert, City Council members, City staff, Gary Ridner, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. Originally, the discussion when I approached the city was about in regards to whether we'd have enough funding to cover the expenses for the repairs from the insurance company. And as a result of how it all played out, we balanced out, okay, we paid out about $5,000, $6,000 out of our own pocket, or what insurance didn't cover. And so from that, I had requested, with the remodeling going on, that we'd be able to put cameras in our main building while it was still raw. I was able to receive funding from the United Way, Gripman. I was turned down by Wells Fargo and shifted that into a homeless prevention fund. And so the cameras we installed inside and around our main building was about $5,000 out of our pocket. We currently don't have the funds in which to add more cameras. And we have been through a tumultuous time, as Gary mentioned, and over the last 27 months, it's been challenging with the loss of 100,000. And we're still maintaining ourselves. But I would like to share with you other things that we do to contribute to this community. And I realize the city has no obligation to help us, but I'd like to make it aware of what else we contribute that reduces potential problems within our community. And these figures are just since January 1st. We have off-site housing. We provide housing for 10 households, of which are a total of 21 individuals, 9 children and, 23, 9 children, 4 adults. We pay about $79,000 a year in utilities and leases. We had motel vouchers where we expended $20,000 from January to the end of March, helped 16 households. Average length of stay was 45 nights, 700 bed nights. We helped with Syringa when that was closing down, and I had funds from the Home Partnership Foundation. That totaled $22,200 that we dispersed in helping people get rehoused. We did not charge anything for our staff time to implement or use those funds. In addition, homeless prevention funds, the grant cycle ends in a couple of weeks. We've put out $16,000 in helping people with power shutoff eviction notices, 32 adults, 35 children. Rapid rehousing is when people are currently homeless, present themselves. We pay first month's rent deposit and sometimes second or third month. We've paid out $19,000 and have helped 24 adults, 9 children. And then currently in our transitional housing, I've got 3 families, 4 women and several males. We average about 8,700 bed nights per year for off-site, and our on-site will vary depending on the amount of people we have, but typically it's about 7,000 bed nights. Between just the 2 main programs we have, we're providing over 15,000 bed nights. As it was said, it has been challenging. I'm not sure how much more my organization can handle with any trials and tribulations. But we've already found that the cameras have helped us immensely to see things that we would not normally see, like at 3 o'clock in the morning. I do have a security person on site, and we will at times double up where they do a normal curfew check of 10 o'clock, but sometimes I have them go out at midnight to do a double check, just kind of keep people on their toes. Again, as time has progressed, the 12-plus years I've been there, I've observed the behaviors of individuals coming through with less respect for property, individuals, et cetera. We do have a success rate of 60% thereabouts of our on-site. Off-site is about a 90% success rate when they transition into their own housing. So I believe as an organization, we contribute a lot to the community. And if the request we have to fund the cameras, it would certainly help with our peace of mind, knowing that we have better security available. Studies and research do show that if cameras are actually used, not bluffs and actions that are seen and are taken as a consequence, it conveys to our people that they actually work and reduces potential criminal involvement or other problematic behaviors that we oftentimes have encountered. I can't tell you what would happen a year ago when I was assaulted, but if that had been on camera, it had been a whole different ballgame. The fire actually was captured on camera, which was used by the police department to prosecute the individual that started that. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I realize my request is a little out of the ordinary. I appreciate your time, and whatever the outcome is, I would appreciate that.
Well, on September 10th, this was in front of the administrative committee. Gina? So.
I can say that I think there were mixed reactions to their request. I think that the couple items that we seemed to have issue with were the fact that this is a single source request. You haven't sought any other grants or any other way to fund.
I did reiterate, I did. Gripman and Wells Fargo. And,
okay, and those were for the cameras.
Right, and Wells Fargo turned me down. Gripman did support it.
Okay, so I guess then I'm unclear as to what the whole scope of the project is. Gripman funded part of it, and so we would fund it potentially to this $7,000.
Correct.
So is it a $7,000 project, or is it
It's a $6,500 project. We've already done half the project on our side. That was help covered by ourselves and Gripman. I'm requesting funding to complete the project on the other side of the street.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we also weren't totally convinced. I'm speaking for the three of us, and I don't want to do that, but I think that we were not totally convinced that the cameras were the complete answer either. Does that seem fair? Art, Ann, feel free to jump in.
You're doing fine.
Oh, I'm doing fine. I just think that we were just concerned about maybe the potential for a fence to keep people out, or in, as the case may be, as a less expensive solution to this problem.
May I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I'm a teacher, and we have cameras at school, and I've worked at schools with cameras. And so I definitely want to fund you because we pull people in and show them what's occurred on camera. And it definitely is a deterrent when they know that they are on camera.
Correct. We've experienced that already several times.
Yeah, even at the school, all the front doors, all the doorways are now cameraed. And so you can see them all the time. Mm-hmm. So we're constantly watching what's happening in and out on the grounds. Mm-hmm. Makes a big difference.
Randy?
Yeah, I think also, I think of these cameras and the investment as a preventative measure to save a lot of money in the long run, not only for you, but potentially expenditures by police, many other ways that impact the city, having people not have a place to go. So I'm thinking of it as a good preventative investment, which is better than trying to fix problems once they occur.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Brandy on that. I think, while we don't have any legal responsibility to support this, I think we kind of have a moral responsibility to help out an organization that's helping homeless people in our community to the level that you are, and I appreciate what you do very much, Steve. And I think it wouldn't take very much in terms of vandalism damage or fire damage or assault damage. I'm sure you're very familiar with that to get to the $7,000 number. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you.
Yeah. I had some trepidations in the beginning, as you know, from committee, but you're able to explain the potential benefits to the wider community. and especially in reduced emergency calls and general use of city resources, both monetary and psychological, about this whole thing. So the PAN's swung out of balance in favor, in my mind, of supporting this.
Catherine?
I do have a follow-up question about maintenance or anything with the cameras. Do you know, in the costs, I know that maintenance and operation, are you going to be able to make sure that they stay at the level that you can use them?
I would hope so. Your question, I'm not quite sure what the answer is to that. I mean, talking with VGH has been the one that have been doing the work for us, and they guarantee their work up to a certain point. But I do have something there where I have policy in place that if anybody tampers with any of the cameras, that they're immediately terminated, then banned for life from any services we may provide. So that's the consequences that we have for that. They are weatherized. We're not concerned about the weather. Most of them will be out of reach of normal people. The ones that I will have across the street, which are, I have 2 family buildings, and if I have one on each side, then they capture each other, and that way ensures that no tampering will occur with the cameras. And that's the best I can do at this point.
Semi-facetiously, do you have somebody to go up and wipe down the lenses occasionally?
You know, I just have realized that I have a cobweb on one of them that kind of triggers it a little bit. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to have to get up there. So that's a good question. And I came to that realization this morning when I was reviewing one of my cameras.
Okay.
I got one more.
Okay.
So, do
Catherine?
you have this stuff on an app that you're watching on your phone, or how are you?
No, I don't. I don't want to take it home with me. I was asked if I wanted to do that. No, I don't. I only review it when I come in the morning, or if there's a crisis at night. We have protocols in place, depending on what the situation is, and then I would be able to come in the morning and deal with that.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
yeah.
Well, I would make a motion to approve the expenditure of the $7,000 from the legislative non-prioritized projects, line 101-010-10-70-16.
Second?
Okay. We've got a motion by Art and a second by Ann to approve the $7,000 from the legislative non-prioritized projects, 101-010-10-670-16. I'll start to roll with Brandy.
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, I, excuse me, I really do support it. Sorry.
You all right? Take a swig of that.
I might be okay, yeah.
Gary, and so this is coming out of this year's budget that's ending the end
Have
of.
to finish your motion, Your Honor.
We got stuck with theirs.
Got stuck with Gina.
Sorry, I choked.
Well, I thought I heard 3 of them say aye.
It only got to there and then didn't go.
No, Catherine said aye. Did you? Aye.
Aye.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, okay, so that's approved, 6-1. Yeah. So this is coming out of this year's budget that ends
sir.
the end of September.
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
we'll do a blue slip sometime this week and get it out.
Okay, there you go, Steve.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your support and belief in what we do for our community. Again, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, item number 7, Urban Berm Additional Final Plat. Michael Ray, how are you, Mike?
Doing well, Your Honor. Council members.
You did. You heard me.
So before you tonight, we have the Urban
Thank
Berm
you. I just swallowed
Addition
one.
Final Plat request. And if you recall, this was the property at the center of your screen, a little over ½ acre in size. You can see Public Avenue running east-west to the north of the property, primarily surrounded by duplex dwellings to the west, south, and to the east, and then more rural residential dwellings to the north. Just a closer view of that property. And so just to recall where we've come from, May 9th of this year, the commission conducted a public hearing to consider the request of Tyler George, and that was the subdivision of that parcel located adjacent to Public for 8 townhouse parcels. Those ranged from 2,700 square feet to 3,600 square feet in size. And the commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat with one condition. The condition was that the developer increase the 5-foot easement to an 8-foot easement adjacent to Public Avenue right-of-way. And then this was reviewed by the council and approved on June 4th, 2018, with the same condition as Planning and Zoning Commission. So if you look at your screen, this is the final plat that was submitted. You can see the 8 townhouse parcels left to right. This was the easement that was increased from 5 to 8 adjacent to Public Avenue. And then to the northwest corner, you've got the stormwater detention pond for this development. So staff's reviewed the final plat for compliance with city and state code requirements and found it to be in conformance. And August 22nd of this year, the commission reviewed and recommended approval of the final plat to city council. And staff recommends that the council approve the Urban Berm Addition final plat. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Michael?
Don't have any.
I move to approve the Urban Berm Addition final plat.
Second.
Okay, motion by Catherine and a second by Gina to approve the Urban Berm additional final plat. Start with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Michael. We will move on to item number 8, educational uses in Central Business District Survey. Questions? Gary Reedner.
You kicked the bucket.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
No, we want to make sure you're here with us, Gary.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope the furniture survives the evening. You have before you tonight a draft survey that was prepared in response to City Council direction. This was talked about on May 21st, 2018. There were changes that the council approved to the zoning code, taking a table approach to uses allowed in different zones. In that discussion ensued regarding whether educational institutions should be allowed in the Central Business District zone. As you know, since 2005, there was a 200-student higher level educational institution, New St. Andrews College, approved for the Scatabo building adjacent to Friendship Square. There was also the purchase by New St. Andrews of a parking lot across Jackson Street that was purchased to provide parking that was part of the requirement in the conditional use permit issued by the city in 2005. Then, more recently, New St. Andrews College purchased the CJ's building on, I believe, A Street and First Street, and they intend to use that as a music concert hall, if you will, and received an additional authorization to have another 300 students in that building. During that same time, after that CUP was approved, and that CUP was approved with conditions relating to parking, which traditionally have been the biggest issues that have been an obstacle for educational institutions in the downtown. So the CJ's CUP was also issued by or approved by the council with some parking conditions attached to it. Immediately after that, within a month or two, Gritman Medical Center approached the city with an application for a CUP to house 40 WWAMI students, Washington, Alaska, Montana, Idaho, can't remember the other one. Wyoming, thank you very much. Medical students in the new Gritman office building. This was in response to an expanded WWAMI program that University of Idaho had cultivated, as well as Gritman Medical Center agreeing to lease space in the new office building to the WWAMI program. Be that as it may, even that is an educational use within the Central Business District requiring a CUP. That was also approved by the city, and so Gritman is providing that space. In August, Bill Belknap, August 20th, came back with a historical perspective, most of the information that I just gave you, but also historically based information on the genesis of and development of the zoning code, when educational institutions were first regulated, any conditions that have pertained to changes within the central business district, and the state of the zoning code as it is today. So based upon that, council members indicated that they desired more information in order to find out what the public's perception was of these educational uses in downtown. At that time, council gave direction that they wanted staff to put together a survey instrument that would be a statistically valid survey, that they wanted it to go out to the community at large in the similar way that we send out our biannual citizen survey. In other words, it is sent out to 1,200 randomly picked households. We hire a service to do that. We don't pick them. We don't hand pick them. So the survey would go out to them. The survey is supposed to have, as you see, it has some history as to the issue, an explanation of what a conditional use permit is, and the current conditional use permits that have been issued, the facilities they've been issued for, and any conditions that have been attached to the issuance of those conditional use permits. In addition, the council wanted to send this survey to every property owner and business owner operating within the central business district. So we brought a draft of this. Bill Belknap did seminal work working on it, did a great job of drafting it. Then he brought it over to administration, where we are responsible for producing the annual or biannual citizen survey and the biannual commission survey. So we went through it, analyzed the questions, and put them into a form that you're supposed to be given a yes or no choice with degrees in between. That's what makes it a statistically valid survey. There has to be a choice. So we took two questions and put them into one. If we hadn't have done that, somebody could say, well, I think it's a bad idea, and then the next question they could say, I think it's a good idea, and they would offset. We wouldn't find out what people thought. So we spent some time on that, brought it to administrative committee last week. There were some questions, I believe. Art wanted some additional detail on what conditional use permits were and when they would be issued. Brandy offered a suggestion regarding some vernacular in each of the questions so that the public would understand that these were CUPs were additional things that could be added to somebody who sought one of those permits. So with that, we brought this to you after that last draft, brought it to you for your approval so that we can start the process. Did receive an email today, Brandy, if you don't mind my bringing that up. There were a couple questions. One of the questions was the survey does not take into account the faculty that is staffing these institutions. And no, it does not. And I don't know if you did that, especially for the WWAMI program. Would you, any professor that were to teach a class or proctor anything, would they have to be added? So it really is pretty fluid. So that was not included. It was just considered to be just too fluid and unexact. There was also a question about the 540 student ceiling that we have now, current CUPs outstanding, are for FTEs. So somebody could be a half-time student, and that would make 2 bodies for 1 FTE. So again, this is one of those situations where it's impossible to predict that. I mean, you could take it down to quarter students and say, well, you're really talking about 2,300 students if they only took quarter classes, if you're just counting bodies. So we looked at FTEs as FTEs. Some of them may be half-time, but the bulk of them likely, at the University of Idaho at least, would be full-time. And we presume that New St. Andrews, being a 4-year institution, would also have that typically some similar demographic. So that's why we didn't break it down like that. Then again, you also add The longer you make it, the more conditions you put in a survey, the more uncertain your responses are. Are they responding to one of the qualifiers, or are they responding to the actual question? So when we complete a survey instrument, we really try to get people to make a choice. Yes, I feel this way about something. No, I don't feel this way about something. Try to get the facts as close as we can, and then we get some amount of public opinion, so it'll help guide your deliberations. So with that, we'd ask for authorization to proceed with the survey.
Questions for Gary? One thing I got a question on, Gary, if these are accepted, when will these go out?
You're really out of my wheelhouse at this point, but I'm assuming that they would go out in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And get back and data accomplished by the end of December type of a thing? Is that what you're
I
looking
would
at?
think it would be before that. We're talking about relatively fewer questions than we are in the citizen survey. One of the other things we didn't want to do, this is the year for the biannual citizen survey as well, and we didn't want to impact any of the potential responses to the citizen survey by this supplemental survey. So we would try to get this out. I think the citizen survey is due to get sent out sometime in mid to late October for receipt back around Thanksgiving. So we hope to miss those two timeframes. So it'd be fairly quickly.
Okay. Catherine?
I really like the background information, and it is there that I have a question, and it's in the paragraph at the very end where it talks at the very last sentence, and it says, after this review process, the permit may be approved without any additional conditions, approved with additional conditions required of the applicant in order to use the location, or it may be denied. And I have a question about that. Have we ever denied any?
Conditional use permit?
A conditional use permit for an educational institution? I don't believe, in my experience, the only folks, the 4 that you see are the only 4 CUPs that I've seen brought forward. Bill, you probably have greater experience.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any conditional use permits for an educational institution that have been denied.
There has been, Catherine, conditional use permits that have been denied that didn't have anything to do with an educational institute that was based on, but usually if the code's not right, then it becomes a variance. And those are usually denied. When I was on Board of Adjustment, I'm just kind of going back from my days, the 4 years I spent on it as a chair. But there were some things that made no sense and got fixed through P&Z, so on and so forth. So hope that helps answer your question.
Well, it does, and I just thought for clarification, we could just add, at this point, we've had no denials, because I think that's important, because at the question number 1, it asks if it should not be allowed within the central business district, but we actually have no precedent for that either.
But does that really matter?
Yeah, why would you ask that
Doesn't really
question?
Why does that have any bearing on people's feeling about whether or not educational institutions
It's just
should
part
be
of
allowed?
background. It's not whether or not
No,
we
it's-
think it's relevant. It has to do with the history of the information.
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Well, there's 2 ways of looking at that, too. If you put some information like that, and you said, well, these have never been,
Yeah, it may skew it.
they've never been disapproved, it'd be
That-
so, oh, okay, maybe it's okay just to go ahead and prove it if they might have a different opinion. I don't know if it's,
Yeah, it could be a prejudicial comment that none have ever been denied, which would imply to some people that it's a good thing and
Right.
prejudice their vote further on down.
Okay.
I know, Catherine, if you're in a, let me point something else out, Bill, and then we'll go over to Bill, but if you're on the Board of Adjustment and you're actually looking at a conditional use permit, I can guarantee you, somebody would be a little bit angst if it was announced, well, none of these have ever been denied. And you have a group out there that might be opposed to it or whatever, it would almost kind of put them in a tough position saying, wow, we got to be the first ones to try to win the war on this thing. Bill, you had a comment?
I was just going to provide some clarification that the description about the conditional use permit process was not intended to be specific to educational institutions, just the CUP process as a whole. So it really wasn't meant to be directly related to applications for a conditional use permit for an educational institution, but just the general process. There's a public hearing, there's an opportunity for the board to consider potential impacts, and these are the actions that they can take upon the application. So it was not intended to be specific to educational institutions.
So even though I know all that, reading this with that information leads me just to wondering if I was a regular citizen. That's all.
Catherine, I think your point is well made. I do, however, think it's entirely within that regular citizen's purview to call the city and find that out. I don't think it needs to be included in our survey. It's not really pertinent information.
Brandy, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I'm not necessarily saying anything needs to be changed there, but this is making me kind of think that or it may be denied. I remember you explaining that it's kind of unusual for it to be denied. I don't know if that's what you were going towards, but it kind of takes something quite unusual to present itself for the Board of Adjustment to deny it. It's not a common occurrence. So I don't know if, or it may be denied if blah. I don't know if there's something that could be said that just kind of gets the idea across that that's not an easy thing for the Board of Adjustment to do, just because they think this is not a good fit. That can't be a reason for denial.
So then the suggestion would be if there are adverse conditions by the use, it cannot be mitigated by
Exactly.
conditions of
Right.
approval.
I think that provides a little more of that background educational, that it's not just up to the whim of the Board of Adjustment, but there has to be some proven unmitigable adverse impacts in order for it to be denied.
Mm-hmm. That's where I was going.
Jim?
Well, when we're talking about whether or not anything's ever been denied, I think we've sort of denied the last one that was presented to us. When it came to us and we remanded it back to the Board of Adjustment, that's sort of a denial of,
It's a denial.
and it had to be redone by the Board of Adjustment before the conditions were met. So I'm not sure that they've never been denied, or that we just like rubber stamp them because that's not really occurred. But I understand Catherine's point. I also think that each one of these permit applications has to stand on its own merit, and you can't look at a group of them and say, this has happened or this hasn't happened. It has to be, they could have all been well presented and certainly within the parameters needed to pass. So I don't know that that's a factor that we want to present in terms of a survey.
And actually, the Board of Adjustment does that very thing, Jim. They look at each thing as an individual item. on its
So,
own
but,
merits.
so what do you think about just adding, or it may be denied if it is determined that it creates an adverse impact that is unmitigable? Are people opposed to that being a part of the?
Yeah, well, at least that says that it can be denied, or it's, if there are unmitigable circumstances, that it could be denied. It's not,
Any conditions approved.
it's not a slam dunk that if you bring a conditional use permit that we're going to rubber stamp it and allow it.
Or maybe halfway in that paragraph, there's a sentence that starts with the conditional use permit process includes. If that becomes its own standalone statement, it separates itself from what's happened in the central business district. And that goes to what you were saying, Bill, that we're just trying to have everybody understand the CUP process.
Well, the last sentence in the whole paragraph does say, or it may be denied. I think for any number of reasons, I think it's pretty well covered as written. And as Gary has pointed out, the more we wade into trying to explain ourselves and get into it, the worse it's going to be for getting a good, statistically valid, unbiased set of responses. Perhaps the unmitigable part could be part of it, but then people are going to go off down that road. What the heck is unmitigable supposed to mean? And so the more of this P&Z legalistic jargon we put into it, the more muddied we're going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I think it's worth considering is that it does for someone who isn't familiar with the process, it lets them know that there has to be a significant reason to deny it.
I think just denied is sufficient, and we start saying, for reasons, and then people are wondering, well, what are these reasons? What's unmitigable supposed to mean? And I think we're just digging ourselves a deeper hole that's going to bias the responses we're going to get. Because when you first set foot in this, for example, did you know what mitigable and unmitigable is supposed to mean? I never did before I waded into planning and zoning. And it's gets more legalistic the further you proceed into it. And I'd assume just avoid it and just say the fact that it can be denied should be sufficient.
Gary?
Yeah, there's a little bit of an art to doing surveys. It's not like, do you like chocolate or don't you like chocolate? I mean, it is, well, I kind of like chocolate, or maybe I don't like chocolate that much, so on and so forth. It's when you start weighing in with definitions, you have to be very careful that you don't suggest an answer you're looking for. So whether it's weighted one way, weighted the other way, or you intend it to be neutral, you stay away from those power words or words people can't understand. So we try to make it as basic as possible. Like I said, when we collapse those two questions into one question, the purpose was to make sure that the results of the question were going to be such that we got a yes or no answer or something in between. We didn't get a all yes and all no on two opposite questions that leaves us right back where we started. So again, I don't think you're going to find a perfect question. When you start putting history into it, it makes it even more inexact.
Gary, you look at. I think keeping things basic is a smart thing to do. Look at. We live in a smart community. We got lots of very, very bright people here that I don't think they need to be guided into something necessarily. And I think by making stuff too cumbersome, it's just asking for more problems down the road.
Well, then here's another
And the
idea.
more words you put into something, the more you're going to have somebody challenge that to some type of a degree. So I think the basic portion of it is a smart way of going.
I'm not going to add any words, but I am going to just make a suggestion then that with the background, take out the sentence and that comma after the zoning board of adjustment needs to leave. But the conditional use permit, take that couple sentences and put it before question 1. Because the background is the background. You're telling what's going on. And then these people are about to answer this question. So then here's the process. And then that's when you get to say the conditional use permit process, and take that and put that before question 1.
All right, I don't understand that.
So if I may.
Please,
if I can
Gary.
paraphrase. I think what Catherine is saying is your whole background, including New St. Andrews and everything else, all of that, you would just take that last half of the paragraph on the paragraph entitled background, put it just before question 1 so that you have your entire history, your entire background, then you have what a conditional use permit is, and then you answer the question. Something like that I think would be fine. I mean, you're just not adding any information, you're just moving it around.
Clarifying.
Bill, do you see any issue with that?
It's just a preference, I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, where you have the background you're going to get into, where you're discussing conditional use permits have been issued, having an explanatory statement in advance of that was helpful for the reader to understand what the conditional use permit is.
What would you think of adding the half paragraph at the beginning?
Sure.
So you had background, explain the conditional use permit process, and then go into the historical perspective?
Sure.
So what do
I
you
just
think
think
about
it
that?
needs to be delineated out. You said you wanted people to understand the whole process, not specific to educational institutions. So in that case, then you would take out what a conditional use permit is and put it someplace else.
okay.
That's just my suggestion. I don't write surveys for a living.
So what do you think about it going first? That being the first part, the background starts by what a conditional use permit is, and then it talks about the central business district, says what's happened, and then goes into the survey.
Yeah, that might be the place for it.
What do you think about that, Bill? Belknap?
Sorry.
Hey, we're putting you on the spot, Bill. We want to.
If you wouldn't mind
You did a
repeating
really
that,
good
please.
job with all this, so, I mean,
Yeah,
I know you've thought about
I'm
it a
just
lot.
strictly just trying to think about what it's exactly what Art said. And I agree with what he said. You know, it gets too cumbersome with language and then you lose them. So if I'm skimming, like a regular citizen might do, myself included, through the background of, all these things happened. Okay, so what's a conditional use permit? And then I go, because I got to know what that is, because that's what I got to answer about.
Well, you know, something you got to consider too is that if you make anything too cumbersome and somebody's reading it, they say, I really don't understand. I'm going to throw it away. I'm not going to do it. And that's the worst thing you can have because you really want to get the feedback of what people think. So that's how I.
Yeah, if you don't get enough people reply, then it's not statistically significant as a
We're not
survey.
adding anything. It's just an idea for rearrangement.
What about if we make it headed by something called the process or the CUP process rather than, because we've got introduction and background and then all of a sudden we've got a paragraph about the CUP process with no heading. So if we just put a heading and take that, like Catherine's saying, just title it. So it is in some degree of line with the rest of them.
The problem with doing that is, as soon as you do that, then you've got the part of a definition of what a CUP is and not the whole story on it, and that could be confusing as well. Because I'm not a legal guy, but it seems to me from a legal standpoint, you're given just parts of things. Now, that's one of the things I ran into when I was on not only P&Z Board of Adjustment as well as the first time I was on council, because say something, somebody said, well, that's not, you'd have something, and I'd say, well, that's not what this said, and then the city attorney would say, oh, but this is what we really mean. Well, that's not what it says. And so you can get something that's not completely done, trying to make a brief explanation, and sometimes that's problematic as well.
So we're comfortable with the words, right? Everybody is comfortable with the conditional use permit explained as it is.
Yes.
Right? And it's on there. If we don't want to pull it out or title it differently, why don't we just leave it like it is?
Well, it seems to me too, is like the people are going to be looking at the questions and won't give her a rip
I
about
would
some of this.
skip all that other stuff and go.
I mean, no, I'm serious.
I
Well,
agree.
some people will, but some people want to really understand what they're responding to, and they will read it, and they will ask questions, and they will want to understand it before they answer
Awesome.
those, so.
I don't know, well, of course, I've got a background, but I could answer these questions and not worry about what the CUP process says. Of course, I know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's,
But the reason I'm speaking on this is because 2 years ago, when we did that first question that was talking about the conditional use process, you've done a very nice job of getting that encapsulated in this very short form. So I would just like to strengthen it by either doing as Gina suggested, saying the process, so that you understand the conditional use process, or just putting it at the beginning of the question, or giving it its own beginning paragraph. It's something maybe you can work on, and I don't.
What about underlining the words, the conditional use process?
Well, I mean, I think we could probably take a look at getting another heading or break out that as a separate paragraph. I mean, the intent was, background just talks about the intent of the Central Business District.
Mm-hmm.
Then continues to say, in 2005, the city council changed the zoning code to allow them as a condition, with a conditional use permit. And then it just goes on to say the conditional use permit process includes a public hearing and allows the zoning board adjustment like a problem. So the concern is that it doesn't say that it could be denied. I guess I'm still trying to understand the flow, because it just kind of, it encapsulates the intent of the Central Business District, the change to the code the council made.
And then it goes into
And it introduces, if I may, it introduces the term conditional use permit, and then the next sentence defines what the conditional use permit is and the process. So I'm still just trying to understand what is, because they started off with a concern that they hadn't been denied, or wanting to include some background that said no conditional use permit for an education institution had ever been denied.
Right, and you all said that hadn't, so that's irrelevant. So then, I'm just trying to make sure that the conditional use permit process is separate from the background of these conditional uses that have been allowed.
I think, if I may, if I can paraphrase what Bill's saying, in 2005, when the council changed the process and made it subject to a conditional use permit, So from a historical perspective, in 2005, it was whatever it was, or prior to 2005. 2005, the council implemented the CUP process. So historically, that is where it falls in the timeline. And maybe explains a little bit of the council's logic in doing it. So with that, I agree with you. I think that's logically where it belongs.
I guess to me, it was when the term conditional use permit was
Yes.
introduced that was the first place that it appears that I felt that that's where it should be explained what that is. If you want to break it out, you could end that background first paragraph with where it ends with a conditional use permit, and then you could have a new paragraph that is headed conditional use permit process, include that, and then you'll jump back to the since 2005 for conditional permits to be issued. If you really feel that it needs to be separated, I think that'd be the way to do it.
Well, I
So it
do
still
only
flow the
because-
same, but
yeah,
it just be
yeah.
broken up by headings.
I do, just because that was, when we looked at the other question that had gotten written, we lost or never actually understood whether or not people understood the conditional use process when they answered the question. And that's what's been definitely addressed with these two questions, especially the first two, about what we were looking at.
So we'll have to play with space to try to get to fit,
Yeah, I know.
because you said that page is pretty full. And we're trying to get this onto one page front and back so that it was,
Yeah.
less costed to produce and mail. So might have to shrink fonts or play with margin size to get a couple lines and a heading in there.
All right, well, thank you for the consideration, and again, I can definitely tell, the level of things that you're trying to address, so I appreciate that. Sure. Yeah.
Gina?
I will admit an added level of confusion with that organization we just talked about, and Catherine called my idea. I don't support it anymore. After having talked through it with the two of you and having you walk us through that, I think it's good as it is. We're going to make a lot more people confused by jumping around and not flowing through this process the way it's laid out. So I have to say it, because it is a tough subject, well explained.
It's the
You
council's
had
service.
Well,
Brandy?
I have a comment on something a little bit different, so maybe I shouldn't, it sounds like maybe we're still talking about this, so I don't want to jump. I had one other thought. I don't know if this could accomplish it. I think the flow is good too. The more we've talked about it, I think it does make sense, the order of things, the way you have them laid out, Bill. I mean, are you thinking, Catherine, just because the questions are so separated from the description of CUP, is it possible, again, spacing-wise, it might be difficult, say, under that first 1A, to have a little parentheses or asterisk, like C definition above, or something like that, that could refer someone back to the background for what that CUP is. So if they jump to that question, they didn't really read it, and they're like, what's a conditional use permit? There could be a notation to refer to the above definition or something. I don't know. A way to just connect them back to it.
You could say, as described in the background
Sure.
section, or something like that.
Yeah, then it could just link people
they
back up to it,
might
since
point
there is
some-
that separation
Sure.
for someone who might need it.
If I may.
Gary?
Certainly have no problem with the references back and forth, but one of the reasons we tried to keep this to 2 pages was so people would actually read it. And it seems a little bit unrealistic to me that someone may, thinking they know what a conditional use permit process is, go right to the questions and answer them. I mean, we have to expect that people are going to read that history. So referencing is one thing, but I don't believe, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. And again, I think the more we put stuff in there, it's going to be more and more
Well, I
complex.
think if people are very, very confused with it, they'll just go down and put don't know, don't know, don't know. So if the catch is, if you want to skew the don't knowers to make sure that they answer it some other way, then that's a good way of maybe trying to do it. But if you make it too complicated, I think you get people say, well, you know what? If they really don't know the process or they're not interested in the process, they'll just check off don't know.
Okay, so
I mean,
if
so
you're
it-
worried about space, there is repetition in the first paragraph, because you have in 2005, and says the Moscow City Council changed the zoning code. And then when you drop down to the new paragraph and it says, since 2005, the city has issued 4 conditional use permits. So if we know that we've changed the zoning code to allow conditional use permits, maybe there's your space.
I like the since 2005 being there.
All right.
I do too, and I'm already confused about this, and I understand the CUP process. I just think we need to leave it alone and get it out there and get our data and let our citizens, give them the benefit of the doubt for being the smart people that they are, and they're going to read. The conditional use permit process includes. Every one of the people are going to read these.
Maybe you could italicize it.
I think we should just leave it alone, send it out there, and collect our
Let's get it
data.
out there.
Because I think the logic flows reasonably well. The language is as simple as we can possibly make it and still receive meaningful responses. And once you get to a point, you start wordsmithing something to death, it winds up dead.
But I'm not wordsmithing.
Well, what
I'm just asking.
okay, so really, let me interrupt.
I
here for
appreciate
just-
what you have to say.
Kathy, let me ask the group this question, because you've talked
I'm done.
about this and Brandy has talked about some of it, but I'm hearing from the other counselors, with the exception of Ann, because she hasn't weighed in on this, that they're fine with it the way it is now. Is that correct? Am I?
Yeah, after we've gone through the discussion and brought up the possible alternatives, I think it comes back to, it's pretty darn well written.
Yeah.
And
Ann,
I
what
think
do you
it's,
think?
it's pretty understandable.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective on it, but I think you actually hit the sweet spot in terms of length and in terms of information provided.
Okay, sounds fine.
So, yeah, I don't feel real strongly about that part either, but I do want to bring up one other thing, which is thank you for the response about the faculty and the FTEs and everything. That all makes sense, especially to me, the faculty part. Yeah, I think what we're trying to understand is how many bodies we have occupying space, whether it be parking or something else, right? And faculty may come for a class and leave, no different than a customer of a business. But in the paragraph, all of the current permits allow for a total of 540 students. I do think it's important to say 540 full-time students, and then maybe in parentheses, if there could be some way to simply just explain that that it could be more if they're part-time students. I don't know the wording of that, but I think that should be captured. I'm not saying we have any way of predicting how many, but you've talked about full-time, and that's not brought down to the bottom. So 540 full-time students, potentially more if there are part-time students included, maybe something like that.
I think that's implicit in the definition of an FTE.
Well, there is,
It's an equivalent, full-time equivalent, and an FTE is self-defining to that extent that may be more bodies. If you have 2 half FTEs together, I think people fully understand that concept, especially living in a university town.
well, the only thing is, it doesn't actually, and again, I don't think we should get into adding a lot more definitions and complications, but it just says 200 full-time students in another place.
Well, if you had, Brandy, if you had 200 full-time students, and let's say some of those are part-time students, those part-time students are going to hang around downtown all day. So if you had 2 half-time students, maybe one of them's in the morning, maybe one of them's in the afternoon, they're gone, it's still one.
I mean,
Could be, or you could have 400 that all,
Yeah, but that's highly unlikely.
Going back to what Mr. Reedner said earlier about questions that might be leading or sort of tilting one way or the other, if we say, I feel that if we say 540 students, in parentheses, could be more, it feels a little bit inflammatory. And I don't think we need to go there. I think 540 is a big enough number to make me kind of have my hair catch just a little bit on fire, that I think, again, because I know Mr. Belknap's methods well, this is well-written, and it's written very carefully. I don't think we need to get any more specific about how many full-times, how many part-times, how many third-times. I think we're good right the way it sits.
well, what about just saying 540 full-time equivalent students?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Certainly do that.
And there's room for that, because there's space at the end of that.
Just space at the end of the paragraph.
Okay, we all in agreement on that? Anybody have heartburn? I think you got the move forward. We
Okay.
all know it. Good with it?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think it's
yeah.
very, very well done. with
Ann,
a
did you have
difficult
something?
Yeah, I actually have a
and something
couple-
that could go to citizens in downtown.
A couple questions about the administration of it in terms of driving up participation, which is relevant to this survey and any other surveys as well. So I just had a couple questions about best practices. So is it ever a good idea to link to more information in a survey? So let's say, I mean, we wanted to keep this, I'm not advocating that we do it for this survey, but I'm just curious if you know.
I know when I took my training in surveying, they want people to, especially in a citizen-type survey, which this is, you want people, you're trying to determine whether they like it or they don't like it. Ultimately, what you're trying to get at is, do they like educational institutions being in downtown to begin with? Do they think it can be conditioned, or just they don't like it at all? Essentially, that's the full panoply of questions you're asking. So encouraging people to research wasn't something, now admittedly, I took that in the early, maybe 2002. So methods may have changed, but at that time, statistically, it's kind of like using SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is not good for a statistically valid survey because you can't, beyond all shadow of a doubt, have someone only answer it once. If they go to a different computer, they could answer it again, so on and so forth. It's getting better and better, but no, there's no best practice that I know of where you would actually link to other information and then have somebody answer, because you don't know who's going to link to it or not.
Can one of you confirm that with whoever we're using?
We're using us.
For some reason, I thought we were using a third party.
No,
to
we use-
Okay, it's all.
We always have done our own
I
surveys.
think where you got that was the fact that the city uses for statistical sampling purposes to generate the addresses for the citizen survey. There's a
Yeah.
third party who pulls
Gotcha.
those.
Thank you for the
But we can certainly
clarification.
check on that, and that's
I would
not a
appreciate
problem.
that. And then my other question was, do we mark the envelope in any way so people know it's a survey?
Yes, it's sent out, I think our citizen survey is actually sent out in an envelope that says contains citizen survey or something like that. We also have methods by which, and I don't know in this survey if it's necessary to have them color-coded for different sectors of the city. Obviously, we'll have surveys that go to downtown. They will be segregated from those sent to the general public. And then we'll also have something on there that says, if you were sent this survey twice, please only answer it once, type things. So we try to take as much guesswork out of it as we can.
Okay, that's something I'd also be interested in seeing, if possible.
See what?
The envelope, whatever
Okay.
you end up using for that. That's all I had.
Okay.
If I may, and I don't know if administration's still doing this, but we used to send out a postcard in advance, about a week in advance of the survey, to let them know they'd be receiving it and to look for it. That way they're aware that if they do receive an envelope from the city of Moscow, that's what it is, because the postcard's pretty quick and easy for somebody to flip and read.
Okay.
So usually there's a postcard that was sent out a week or 2 weeks prior to the mailing of the survey instrument to the same address, notifying they've been selected and they'll be receiving it in that period of time. And then a follow-up postcard is then sent usually about 3 to 4 weeks after the initial survey, encouraging them to complete it if they have not. So I know there's some advance notice, and there are publications that take a look at that and say, if you offer them $1 for completing the survey, or if you send a postcard, or if there's a letter signed from the mayor along with it, each of those actions can increase the response rate. And so I know we've gone with the postcards and the letter from the mayor on the citizen survey. I don't know if administration anticipates doing the postcard for this one as well.
Yeah, we figured we'd follow the same process that we do for the citizen survey.
Awesome.
So give us advance notice and all the other stuff.
You know,
I don't think we've determined if it's necessary to get different sectors of the city, except for the CDB, Central Business District.
Thank you.
Okay.
And did you say you anticipate 2 to 3 weeks is about when it would be going out? Is
I
what
would
you
think
said?
that would be pretty, I mean, it's already drafted, now it's a matter of getting it sent out. So we should be able to bring our attention to that pretty quickly.
Okay, we're good. We talked it to death, so I think
We did
it was
it.
a
We
good
just
conversation. We got
discussed it.
everybody.
It's our chance. We got to do it as best as we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, not a problem with
To
it.
really
Well,
find out what
thank you,
people
Gary.
think.
We're going to go on to reports. I'm going to start with you, Gina.
Oh, good. Okay, so, I I attended the Transportation Commission meeting last Thursday, and I have to say, it was kind of a fun one. And I've been to enough meetings now that they get to be a little painful. But this one was, we did a lot of visioning. And so they had gone back through the last, 4 or 5 years of ideas that the Transportation Commission had come up with. And they kind of rated themselves on what had been done and what they were still looking at and things that they wanted to work on. And it was really cool. So we are going to, the biggies that they were talking about, reviewing the comp plan with the new transportation changes. And then they would like to have, for our meetings, a running list of things that we need to be keeping track of and watching and things like that. Really, really a good meeting, and gosh, it was 2 hours before I knew it. It was awesome. And then, actually, Monday of last week, I attended the board meeting for the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department. Let me see, 4 new prospective members were voted in. Pretty exciting. They're really doing well on their fundraising goals. And they are still talking, and I know I mentioned it last time, at last council meeting, they're talking about non-disclosure agreements and the importance thereof with internal conversations and things like that. And they have been talking to you or heading your way, Mia, very soon. Yeah, they're coming. It'll be a whole group of them, you'll know. They have all the white shirts. And then I also attended the City of Moscow Sanitation System Master Planning Advisory Group meeting. That is a giant title. We are reviewing, we discussed a couple technical memos. We've set a couple dates. October 3rd is our Sanitation Master Planning Open House presentation. So October 3rd, 6 to 8 p.m. will probably be right here in this fine room. And then they are tentatively also looking at a workshop for City Council towards the end of October. It's really pretty exciting. Got some fun ideas of what can be done. We saw a couple neat potential layouts that were kind of cool for a recycling and fabulousness center. So, and then on Thursday of this week, if I may, we're going to have the Idaho Economic Development Association here in town for a one-day conference. It will be held at the Pittman Center, but there'll be a reception the night before and that sort of thing. So if you see a lot of people that look like me, you know where we're all going.
Jim?
Wait, what was the thing on October 3rd? It's like for the general public?
That's
or-
the open house. Yep.
Okay, and
Yep.
it's from 5 to 7?
6 to 8.
6 to 8.
Here
Thank you.
in council chambers. And there'll be more correspondence going
Okay.
on, Brandy. It's just me
Okay.
blurting it out right now. But
Getting a little preview. Thank you.
Jim?
Last week I went to the 1912 facilities meeting, and Jenny revealed some plans on some design concepts for the second floor that are being worked on. What might be space where the arts department could occupy some of that. We could use some of that space, and how the plumbing and everything is going to be pre-planned, and so that there's no tearing things out to put plumbing in later on, and it will be planned out to also facilitate the completion of the third floor at some point. So they're looking ahead, not just to the next floor, but the complete building and how it might be used. So that'll be, the design concepts will be presented pretty soon. So you can look forward to that, and it looks pretty exciting. Also, I went to the Day of Tribute. I stood in for Mayor Lambert, and we walked from the golf course, Elks Golf Course, to downtown, about 80 people, carrying the flags that had all the names of the people that died in the World Trade Center etched on the flag, and raised it on the ladder truck and read a proclamation, and it was well attended, and I think went a long way to reminding people, a lot of which weren't born when this happened, that this is a real thing and we need to pay attention to it.
Thank you for doing that for me too, Jim. Filling in for me. Brandy?
Let's see, so the URA, the request for proposals passed. There was one that ended up being withdrawn, and so essentially there were none. So what was decided, a new RFP went out on September 8th for 90-day periods, so it's until December 21st. So tell all your friends to submit their plans for Six and Jackson, and for something very cool. And then I think everyone got the little invitation, but the Orchids Awards and Fort Russell expansion celebration are happening this, let's see, the 20th? Thursday, thank you. 5:30 to 7:30 at the 1912. There's going to be food for sale by the new Hoof and Trotter Barbecue. Hunga Dunga will have beer. There's a president of the Idaho Historic Preservation Society coming from to give a talk. So they've really been working hard and hope a lot of people come. So please attend if you can. And tomorrow, 5:30 is the Pathways annual bike tour starting at the Intermodal Transit Center. That's it.
Catherine?
The Moscow Arts Commission is having their big Now Pack event for the next 2 days. And tomorrow night, if you can attend, the ACLU mural that's going to be, there's going to be a launch for that mural that's going to be on that building that's the north face of the Moscow Hotel building, right? Thank you. And Kevin Kelp is the project manager for the ACLU, and he is in charge of, they've whittled down the artists, and now they will be the next, following the master plan of the Art Commission in our city for the guidelines for what that public art's going to look like. And then, so that's tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in that parking lot in the north face of the Moscow Hotel. There's going to be a big launch party for that. And then if there's these, also the little postcards for the 3rd Street Gallery as we came in. This is the stuff. This is, we're working with the Lake Tahoe Historical Society, and these are collections by people in our community, September 6th through 2nd. And on the postcard, it has all the speakers that are going to be around, talking about curating or what to collect and how to take care of textiles. And Lake Tahoe Historical Society has definitely been working to make things, people pay more attention to what's happening in our county. And on the September 30th, they have the Lanterns and Luminaires in East City Park, 4 to 9. And on the 27th in the Kenworthy, there's going to be the Portland Cello Project. So that's the Kenworthy's biggest fundraiser, so they would really appreciate people coming out for that. And I think that's it.
Okay, Arthur.
Palouse Knowledge Corridor continues to rejigger its schedule and emphasis. And coming up this fall in November, we've got the High School Entrepreneur and Inventor Workshop Weekend, 2 1/2 days back-to-back. We're working with the various school districts to assess the degree of interest there, and it's a way to get high school students launched into the world of how to make sure your invention is patentable, what the process is, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, these are things that you need to know, and start practicing on your elevator speech and things like that. So that's coming up in November, and that's all that was on my docket.
Okay, yeah.
Nothing for me, actually. Smart Transit meets tomorrow. I was unable to attend Fair and Affordable Housing, and P&Z did not have a quorum.
Okay. September 7th, we had the Vandal Block Party downtown, which was a lot of fun. I wanted to mention that. And so we got a chance to walk around and talk to people for 4 hours until this old guy went home. And the kids came out then, of course, because it's just early for them. That was a fun evening, and it was a lot of excitement in town. And of course, there was a lot of things going on. The high school had a homecoming. I kind of took away from it. And then there was a Hall of Fame sports thing going on at the university as well. So that took a little bit of starch out of it. But the point is we're doing those, and we're going to have them every single year. And they're working out pretty nice. September 18th, tomorrow, the Now Pack starts here at 9 a.m. I'm going to do a welcoming here for it, and so I'm kind of excited about that. I got a chance to meet John, the head guy for it, so it'll be kind of a fun thing. And this Now Pack thing for the arts and the things that we're doing, I think it's a pretty cool thing, Catherine. And then I just want to tell everybody that next Monday is going to be the first Mayor's Youth Advisory Council meeting.
We may not have a quorum, but we're gonna have some kids in here, and we're gonna go over bylaws with them, so it's gonna be fun. I'm really excited about that. So that'll be our first one, and more to report on that as we go along. Gary, do you have something for us?
Just an announcement that I will be at my annual conference, leaving on Friday, so will not be around for a week. Also, Gina had mentioned the sanitation master planning process. We are looking for a time to interface with the council. The easiest time for everybody seems to be Monday night. We do have 5 Mondays in October. Some council members take all of those free Monday nights and run with them. As staff, we like to fill them up with all the meetings, so you don't have to do them at other times during the week. Although it is Monday Night Football, so it's counterintuitive. But if that 5th Monday would be, and I'll send an email out on it, but if you could be planning on it, that's likely when we will be having that meeting, just so it fits in with our regular schedule. That's all I have.
Okay, I would seek a motion to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1B, 1C, and 1F, and this meeting here will not reconvene once that is over.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move to executive session. Thank you all.